So going into another story, I always end up getting the Resident Evil storylines, which I'm okay with that. I like that. I'm a Capcom guy.
I know you love them.
I'm a Capcom guy. So this broke a little bit after we recorded last week, but it was all kind of rumors and stuff like that. So there are reports that Capcom plans to release a Resident Evil 4 remake in 2022. That would put it 1 year after the supposed rumored Resident Evil 8, and only a year after that they just launched Resident Evil 3. And obviously Resident Evil 2 came out last year. So the report cites multiple development sources have indicated that the Resident Evil 4 remake is now in full production, development headed by Tetsuya Minami of M2, which was a story not too long ago that, they were rumored to be working with Capcom on a sort of survival horror game. And people kind of were guessing Resident Evil 4 remake. I didn't think it was going to be true. If they do a Resident Evil 4 remake, it would have to be in the vein of like Final Fantasy VII almost, not extending it to like 7 parts or whatever, but you got to really, really do it. Just making the graphics pretty and maybe making Leon walk and shoot at the same time is not going to cut it because of that game's constant resurgence. I mean, it's on PS4, Xbox One, PC constantly, Switch even has it, so... are you excited for this? I've never been, I enjoy Resident Evil 4, but I've never been like a diehard that's the best Resident Evil game.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of this is very intriguing to me. 4 is probably the one that I have the largest attachment to in terms of all the Resident Evil games, and if I have to go back to an older one, I'm probably going to 4 before I'm going to a lot of the other ones. So the 2 and 3 remake were exciting to me, but those I didn't really have like a kindred connection to those games. So 4 is the one that I'd probably actually rush to play the most. But again, yeah, they have to do this justice, and it's interesting that we live in a reality where Capcom's basically annualized Resident Evil. It seems like that's the direction they're taking it. Is they're going to swap between mainline entries and remakes maybe to get as close to annualization as possible, which is interesting. I'm curious to see how this plays out. It's incredibly ambitious, and 4 was not the direction I think they hit quite yet, just because of the sheer ambition of it. I thought they would have maybe went to a Resident Evil 0 or a Code Veronica before they touch 4, just because, again, this is a massive undertaking. And to give it to M2, who, again, Tetsuya Minami is no joke. If you know his work from like the Platinum days and his early Capcom stuff, this guy's no joke. And this team, if they had anything to do with 3, it depends on what aspect of 3 they had something to do with. I doubt they had anything to do with the narrative. It's probably more engine stuff. That game runs great. So if that's what their contribution is, that makes me really excited for them to be able to take on 4. I can't speak as to how this is all going to turn out. I don't know. It's still, I guess this is not technically Capcom in-house. This is something that they're financed and it'll probably be published by Capcom, but this is kind of, in a way, giving it to another team. So that's an interesting choice in and of itself. But Capcom are on kind of a high right now, so I have faith that they must see that this is something that could be delivered by M2. It's a newer team. It's their most beloved property. Again, this reminds me a little bit of that whole, Final Fantasy VII Remake going to CyberConnect thing. It's like, why wouldn't you do this in-house? Not equating M2 and CyberConnect, but it's an interesting choice to take your most beloved property and to not kind of have all hands on deck on that. That's an interesting choice, but maybe they're just doing that with 8. And they're kind of just treating this maybe with a Shadow of the Colossus Bluepoint type situation, maybe.
Yeah.
Where they're taking kind of like a third party team that's, well renowned, good talents over there, and kind of having them deal with it, because again, it's going to be faithful to the original. The kind of groundwork is there, and maybe they're just kind of cleaning up assets and making this world kind of have like a modern take on it and playing a little bit with the narrative, but they're not building something from the ground up, as opposed to like 8, where they probably want all their writers there, all their best programmers there and developers and stuff like that. So I mean, it's interesting. I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt right now, because yes, 3 was a little bit of a miss, but I mean, hey man, they knocked it out of the park with 2. And the RE engine is pretty impressive. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here, but I think it's something that, one thing, they haven't formally announced it yet. We have to keep that in mind. And it has yet to be seen what exact direction they're taking it in.
Yeah, because again, obviously Resident Evil 4, the ports that we've been getting aren't in the new engine. So don't get me wrong, it'd be probably fantastic to see that world. Maybe add a little bit more color, because I've always thought Resident Evil 4 always had such a tan, gray looking kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Whereas Resident Evil 2 and 3, especially with the city, kind of plays with the lights and the colors like that, and just makes the world a little bit more vibrant and like enjoyable to be around. But maybe, I don't know, including more characters somehow. Maybe, you know, that's why I was under the not impression, but the guess that they would probably go with like Code Veronica and stuff, because timeline, you want to see what these characters have been doing and stuff before. Give us some time. I'm only worried that I don't feel like Resident Evil is one of those series that needs to be annulated, you know, because you lose a little bit of the magic like that, and horror games are hard when you do that, like annualization constantly, and you know most games now can't survive that. I mean, even if you think like not dumb, but a smaller scale game like Five Nights at Freddy's, that game was dropping 3 games a year, and after the third one, I immediately stopped caring because I was like, in 2 more months you'll see they're gonna release another one. I don't want that to be. I know Resident Evil's on a way different scale than that, but I don't want it to get to the point where, you know, Ubisoft learned their lesson. They had to slow it down with the annualization because the stuff gets really bad. You know, you had a high, you know, with Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and then immediately the third one was a little bit less, and then the third was the third one. Revelations was the last one with Ezio. And you know, you see the quality decline when you don't have the passion and the time to really bring it up to par to your standard and your fans' standard and the game they deserve, because you know we are paying for your game. So it all really goes hand in hand. At the same time, like you said, Capcom is on a high. They're doing really well. I feel like they know what they're doing. I'd be kind of surprised if they crank out so many Resident Evils and they haven't touched some of their other stuff yet. I know everyone keeps asking for like Dino Crisis for some reason, which I actually think would probably do really well with the lack of like Turok games and stuff like that. And like obviously Beautiful Joe and all they have such a big library that they could be spreading it out a little bit more, because that'll be what, 5 Resident Evil games consecutive. That's kind of a lot. You know, I was nervous about 2 and 3 even being so close together, and obviously that was supposed to be one kind of package, but we'll see how they do it. And you know, I'd love to play it. Obviously, no matter what, I'm gonna get it day one, most likely. So
yeah, I mean, annualizing's difficult, and I've only really seen it offhand that I can think of successful in 2 ways, and there's 2 ways to go about it. You got the sports franchises that kind of build upon the framework of the previous years and kind of, you know, add roster stuff, play with the engine a little bit stuff, and that is what they do. That is what that team is dedicated to. And they do it at a really high level, and it's really impressive what they do, you know, in terms of like the Madden games, the FIFA games, and stuff like that. The other way to do it is something like Activision does with Call of Duty, but again, they have multiple teams. That is also what they do. So, and you got like, you know, complementary teams too. So, I mean, you got the Infinity Wars, you got the Treyarchs, you got the Sledgehammer, you even got Raven coming in there. So we're talking about a mass amount of people dedicated to one game on 3-year cycles, and that's how they annualize it. But to have one team or 2 teams, I don't know if Capcom can scale on that level, and that remains to be seen. I'm just worried. I think it's a bigger chance that they end up more like Ubisoft than an Activision.
Yeah,
if anything.
For sure.
And I mean, Ubisoft's a massive company, and they took a beloved property like Assassin's Creed, and I mean, things were rough for that for a while. And again, it's hard to imagine for some people now that they're coming off the high of Origins and Odyssey, and you know, everybody's anticipating whatever that game ultimately be called. You know, it's rumored that it's Ragnarok and all that. It's on a real high right now because they were able to reinvent the game. But for a while, I mean, following, you know, Black Flag and stuff like that, things were rough for that franchise. And there was a point where people were like, oh, Assassin's Creed is dead. Nobody cares about it anymore. Only the hardcore care about it. And luckily, they were able to rebound by giving themselves a little bit more time to breathe. And I just don't want to see Capcom have to go through that, where they drop, you know, 5, 6, 7 Resident Evil games in a row, and just the returns are diminishing to the point where Resident Evil no longer holds any special value, and then they have to pull back again. I'd rather them not have to go through the high and low, and rather just pace themselves and make it mean something when they come out. But again, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt right now. They're kind of on a weird, shaky ground with 3. It's kind of mixed results, but it's not enough for me to say that, you know, it's a lost cause. But ultimately, we'll see once 8 comes out, if that comes out, and the 4 remake comes out, and we'll see how the returns are and see how they run. Then I think that's the moment we'll know if Capcom can actually handle that load.
Yeah, that's true. So we'll have to wait and see.